Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good any time of the day or night, wherever you are. Peace and blessings. And thank you for joining me with just a little bit of your time again today. So I just want to go ahead and pick up where where I left off rather. And I want to start with a statement that said, uh, they had created an orbiting cycle that would turn on its own axis forever unless a phenomenon occurred and the reshifts the position of the female, the African female. And I want to go ahead and reiterate what caused that axis to start turning, which was throwing the female slave into a frozen state of independence and killing the protective male image and creating a submissive mind in the male African who would be walk behind and be walking in fear for his life and his inability to help uh, the females and the children. Okay, and I also want to point out again that the axis that this of this orbiting cycle was the female. Without the female, African female, this was not going to work. And I also want to point out, Willie Lynch told the slave owners who were learning this method not to focus or concentrate on the breaking generation. And the reason for that is because that first generation wasn't only going to be psychologically and physically and mentally broken and devastated. They would also remember what it took to get them in that state. And so, because they had experienced it firsthand, again, with the breaking generation, that generation where Willie Lynch talked about if you use it consistently for a year, he guaranteed that it would work for at least 300 years. In that breaking process, horrible, horrific things, as we've already talked about, took place. And I mean, the beating, the torturing, the setting on fire, the hanging, the being mauled by dogs, being ripped apart by a horse with one leg tied to each horse and then being tarred and feathered and set on fire. And then the horses being whipped so they would go ahead and run in opposite directions and split the slave in half, or at least tear off whole parts of his body, which of course it would have been a blessing if it was instantaneous death, but he probably bled out, okay? And then to beat the other slave within the inch of his life and just have every move he make until he was sufficiently physically recovered. But then to have that experience forever embedded in his mind, you know, those were the things that were experienced by the breaking generation that future generations would not experience. They could be told about them, but they would never have in their minds and in their spirits the memory of seeing it, being there, feeling it happen. They would never have that. And let us not forget that the African women, their punishment was just not psychological. They were beaten too. They were beaten into submission for anything that the slave owners wanted to do. Not only breaking in their females to have that independent streak or be independently frozen, but anything. They had to teach their girls to do anything that the slave owners wanted to do. They had no control of their physical bodies. They had, they couldn't come and go as they pleased. They weren't free. They were physically defiled at the whim and the desires of the slave owners. There was no such thing as maternity leave after they had babies. Many times they were back in the field working within hours, 2 to 3 hours of having given birth to a child. So their lives were not easy. They suffered many, many things. And it was just horrendous. They weren't skipping and whistling around the plantation. They had no more freedom than the male African slaves. They maybe even had less. So that first generation experienced things that probably future generations could not even fathom. So as much as they may have heard about it, and as horrible as hearing about it may have been, it would not have had the same effect as personally experiencing it. Future generations would experience the effect of the method of indoctrination, but only the first breaking generation actually experienced the physical part of that and what it took. He just wanted the effects of the method to be passed on to future generations. Now, at the risk of redundancy, I do want to say again, it is very important that we remember that these Africans had been brought to a place that didn't resemble their culture or anything, their way of life, nothing like that. When they reversed the roles through the implementation of this Willie Lynch method, and the women, the African women, were thrown into this frozen state of independency, it was completely foreign to everything they knew. The men in their households had done the fishing and the hunting, and the farming, and had created all of the resources necessary for her to do her job. Now, she didn't have any of that. She didn't have that strong male, dependable male image to rely on. That had been taken away from her. So, like many females today who have been in marriages or have been in relationships and have had children, and their relationships don't work out, they revert or to that independency. That's that frozen state of independency. I talk to so many, And I was in there myself. I know what it is. But you don't know at the time that that's what it is. You don't know at the time that it is because of this indoctrination of the Willie Lynch method. From all those years ago, that's why we're doing it. The other reason why we're doing it is because of what the men went through. Okay? The men reversed, were placed behind. You talk about somebody playing on first class and second class treatment. This was all implemented in the Willie Lynch method. There was no such thing as first class, second class, better than, lower than, higher than. That was none of that existed. This was all a part of the Willie Lynch indoctrination. And so when the men were, especially this one that was beaten in the first generation of programming, of conditioning, this male that was beaten to within an inch of his life, I mean, do we even understand how long it might have taken him to recover physically, let alone spiritually and mentally, psychologically? No, I would not be amazed. As a matter of fact, I know that many of those men and African men and African women went to their grave still consumed with this indoctrination that was so foreign to them. It didn't look like anything that they knew or anything that they had ever seen or experienced or lived. They were used to order and they had a strategy and planning. They didn't do any of this haphazard stuff, and they certainly didn't need anybody to beat them to do what they were supposed to do. But they were never supposed to be slaves. So this was just completely foreign to them. It was not natural, And I have to believe that despite all that they went through and all of the indoctrination, that they still had that small ember that continued to burn deep within the recesses of their being, that would serve as a light back to their roots, back to their culture, back to their way of life. So we are going to leave this part of the Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave for right now. We will come back and visit this, and we're going to move on to another part, which is a warning. It says possible interloping negatives, and we will get into that in the next video. Some things in there that are going to be just really wow. You wonder what kind of mind comes up with these things. But anyway, we will do that the next time. This time, I thank you for joining me. Peace and blessings. And as always, stay woke. Especially stay woke now. We got some things coming up and I think are going to be very, very interesting and are going to explain a lot of this mess that we see right now. All right? We will talk and be with you at a later time. See y'all.